Hey guys, give us just a second. We're about to start the show, waiting for everybody to get in here. I got Jeff Morgan and Jeff Younger waiting. Show will begin in just a second. Welcome to Dad Talk Today. My name is Eric Carroll, and we have an amazing show lined up for you. We are fighting for fathers all across the United States and all across the world where you can be glad to be dad. Stick around, guys. Dad Talk Today is about to begin. Hey everybody, welcome to Dad Talk Today. We're going to be discussing the Save James case that we have covered before. We got some updates yesterday that I think many of us are very, very upset about. And brought Jeff on here to tell us a little bit about what's going on. Jeff, man, the platform's yours, buddy. We're here to fight for you tooth and nail. Tell everybody a little bit about the update that you got yesterday.
Well, the court finally manufactured a pretext to take my children away from me so that my ex-wife can continue to transition my son to a girl.
Yeah, so I don't know what to say, man.
But that is the best way that I've heard it done. They have manufactured a pretext. That's what these courts have been doing. That's what we've been arguing about. That's what we've been yelling about. These courts are not basing anything other than on something. They have predetermined rulings in mind before they start, but then they have to justify their rulings. And in this case right now, I've read through the paperwork, the temporary restraining order, and also the memorandum. This is nuts. And Eric, I can speak to this because I actually was down for the entire trial a couple of years ago. I saw this stuff. And obviously, you know, I've talked with Jeff on many occasions, done my own research on it as well. This is absolutely insane. Manufactured pretext is exactly what this is. We cannot let this stand.
So I say this case is so complex. Of course, we got the family law corrupt machine that is involved in this, but that's not all. You got the LGBTQ issue, and this has become very political. It's almost became like there's two sides to this story. And there, I saw a comment earlier about how, we became far right and different stuff like this. Guys, that's who's helping fight back against this right now. There are a lot of people that are in favor of this happening. And that scares the absolute crap out of me.
Right.
So forget about your political parties right now. If there's somebody that's going to help fight against this, we need all the support we can get. I think this is one of the most important cases going on in this country right now, because if this is allowed to continue, you're going to see it all across the country. I've said that numerous times.
The biggest issue in my case, and I think it shows up in family courts across the country, is that the whole premise of the American justice system is based on adversarial presentations of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Two sides get to present the best evidence they can get on an issue, and then an impartial judge decides by a preponderance of the evidence which claim has merit, or if some combination of the claims makes more sense, right?
Right.
What family courts do with court-appointed counselors is they prevent the adversarial showing of evidence. So, for example, in my case, the judge picked counselors that she knows personally that have practiced in her court before, and disallowed me from getting second opinions from other psychologists or psychiatrists. I've never once in 7 years now, never once been able to get my own independent psychological evaluation. The courts have never allowed me to do that because they do not want an adversarial show of evidence on this issue. The courts are using experts to manufacture the opinions that they want so they can deliver the rulings that they want.
And Jeff, you've also never had an impartial judge. Let's be honest.
That's true. I've never had an impartial judge. All of them have been either way biased towards mothers or way biased on the transgender issue to the point that they can't render an impartial decision. In the case of the judges I've had, both of those have been true.
Right.
And what we haven't even mentioned, the gag order. They tried to gag you from talking about this and fighting for your son.
Yes.
It's one of the most unconstitutional things I've ever heard of.
The gag order, I mean, I showed it to judges in Texas and their jaws just dropped. Like even judges in normal civil courts outside of family court are just, aghast at the gag order that they gave me. I mean, they actually barred me from talking about political topics. They barred me from participation in the democratic process in the Texas legislature to cooperate with my fellow citizens to pass laws and to petition the government for redress of grievances. These very basic rights that we have that our whole system is based on, that we cooperate and inform our fellow citizens of important issues involving the government and the law. And these courts are routinely prohibiting us from that kind of cooperation. And what I just decided was I'm not following unconstitutional laws, mandates, or orders anymore. Ever again, I'm never following them again. And I'm going to resist and disobey them. I'm going to disobey them on principle. And I went around Texas telling judges in the audience that I am disobeying a court order and that I'm going to continue to do it. I've invited the judge to throw me in jail for violating the gag order, but she won't do that because she knows full well that when I go to the Texas Supreme Court, I'm going to win. And that's going to bind every family court from doing this again. It'll be judicial misconduct to do it. And she doesn't want to lose that freedom to take away the constitutional rights through fear of other litigants that come into her court.
Jeff,
so instead, they chose other reprisals against me, taking my children, assigning me all kinds of abusive attorney's fees and things like that. She's going to do it that way so she doesn't have to address the gag.
I don't know if you can address that. Talking about these attorney's fees, what did that last meeting? What about did that run? Can you give us a ballpark?
The last hearing, I paid over $50,000 for it. The other side asked for a total of about $60,000 in legal fees and sanctions. The judge didn't do that, thank goodness, because that would clearly be an abuse of discretion. But the judge did award me $3,500 in attorney's fees for her to file for late child support when I was never late.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, let me ask a quick
question. Go ahead, man.
I want to go back to what you were just talking about, Jeff, regarding the gag orders and everything. I looked at the restraining order, which is effective immediately. This order shall be binding on respondents, agents, servants, and employees, and on those persons in active concert or participation with them who receive actual notice of this order by personal service or otherwise. What in the world does this mean? I looked at the order, and basically all it was saying is that you're immediately restrained from possession or access of the children. It looks to me like the order itself is just nutty, makes no sense whatsoever. Why are we concerned with possession of the children? Or I think what she tried to do, I think she's trying to strike fear in us, like what you were saying, and keep us quiet, trying to make us afraid to say anything about this issue. But I don't know. I said, I can't understand this. Do you have any insight as to what this ridiculous order?
This is, I believe, the result of illegal collusion between opposing counsel and the judge. Mm-hmm. Opposing counsel in this case has been consistently saying that you, Eric Carroll, you, Jeff Morgan, the administrators of the Save James page on Facebook, and a vast army of anonymous troll warriors online. Apparently, They have painted me as a black hat hacker in control of a giant troll army threatening the security of the United States, justice, good, and the American way. And so what they're using here, what they're attempting to do is to set up a use of the law of agency to link other people to me so that they can be enjoined by the court. So under the law of agency, there are some requirements that are met for who is acting as an agent for somebody else. And if that's the case, then the court can give them an injunction and gag them too. So that's why their employees, of course, act as agents of their employer, right? So that's why the employee is there. But notice that it says something more broad. And on those persons in active concert or participation with them
Right.
who receive actual notice of this order by personal service or otherwise. So what she intends to do is to serve this restraining order on all you guys.
Oh, I understand that.
I openly tell you, Jeff didn't ever reach out to me. I reached out to Jeff. And even if Jeff wasn't on this screen right now, we would be talking about this case because we need our warriors to stand up now more than ever. If we can't fight for this 9-year-old child, then what are we here for? And this is our right to get out here and do this.
This is it. This transgender issue in family court is the hill to die on right here. This is it. Because if this issue goes, all issues go. Because this is just a simple issue of whether reality is real.
Right.
Is a boy a boy? Is a girl a girl? That's all this is about.
So let's hop into that for a second, Jeff. I know we're talking about the gender transition. People, if you don't know the story, go back to our former video. We went through it and explained the whole thing. So with this new order, I do believe she is blocked from doing the gender transition, right?
Well, no.
Okay.
He's blocked from giving James hormones, puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. So she can't chemically castrate him. But the judge is allowing her to socially transition James. Absolutely. So James is in a dress. He's being taught that he's a girl. He's registered in school as a girl. The school is teaching him that he's actually a girl. Every authority figure in his life now, since they've taken me out of his life, is going to be telling him that he's actually a girl and that his father is wrong, that he is not a boy. So they are absolutely transitioning my son. And my experts testified at the previous trial. This is, keep in mind, one of my experts was Dr. Levine, who is the world preeminent expert on transgender medicine. He is at the pinnacle, at the top of the pyramid of transgender medicine, mainly because he founded the entire field of transgender medicine. He's the man who went to the UK and got the practice outlawed in their courts. Okay, so you can't do sex change surgeries on kids under 16 in the UK because of Dr. Levine. Dr. Levine gave extensive testimony in my trial that affirming a child as a girl verbally and socially is not a neutral intervention. That it is extremely harmful to children because it affirms, often cases, what are delusions, and it causes the gender dysphoria to persist and pushes children to chemical castration drugs. It is not neutral what the court is allowing.
Not at all. And I also remember too, I remember so clearly when he stated he looked at the child custody evaluation report by Dr. Benjamin Albritton, and he said with this one sentence, I knew that he had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's right. He did not. Benjamin Albritton diagnosed my son with gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria has two criteria. Criteria A is there a set of behavioral criteria. Criteria B says that there has to be significant social or emotional impairment. But Benjamin Albritton, James's teachers, his previous psychologist, his pediatrician, and his mother all testified that he's the happiest kid in school and has no significant social or emotional impairments. If that's the case, he can't have gender dysphoria. Yet they still diagnosed him with gender dysphoria, and that issue has never been addressed and has not been addressed by the ethics bodies or psychologists in the state.
I wonder, do we have any statistics on this gender dysphoria of kids that are growing out without that same-sex parent in the household? I mean, you wonder why. I mean, a lot of these boys are turning feminine, but they're also growing up with single mothers. They don't have strong male influences.
Let's be honest, they're growing up with single mothers who aren't really happy with men sometimes.
Right.
Yes.
and don't really want to have a son, or think that their son is going to grow into the kind of man that their ex-husband was that they detest, and they want to change that. Most of the children, most of the boys that you see being transitioned are being transitioned by mothers, and most of them are in divorced households. The most egregious case is out of Canada with Rob Hoogland.
Right.
And a really egregious case out of Minnesota with Brenton Netz.
Mm-hmm.
And what Brenton Netz's wife has done is just the same thing that Robert Hoogland's wife did. She transitioned Brenton Netz's son without his consent or knowledge, and put him on chemical castration drugs and cross-sex hormones.
And Jeff,
without his knowledge or consent.
Jeff, isn't his son also, doesn't he have Downs? I'm not positive.
He has autism.
Autism.
Yeah, and that's what we're also finding. Most of these boys that they're transitioning have autism because they're highly suggestible.
Right. Right.
And they're preying on these kids.
Yeah. And Eric, this is something that's also happening to girls too. I mean, Abigail Schreier of the Wall Street Journal wrote the book Irreversible Damage, the transgender craze seducing our daughters. This is not just happening to boys, it's happening to girls. You're having girls going in for breast mastectomies, and they're not even in puberty or or in puberty. I mean, this is crazy, the whole thing that's going on. And for us as a society, and for these judges to not consider this to be abuse, but rather to participate in the abuse, just blows my mind. And for these attorneys, and I'm going to talk about Jessica Janicek just for a moment. She's with Kunstfuller. In my opinion, Kunstfuller is one of they're a very powerful law firm, but I think one of the most unethical law firms. On their website, they say, there are two sides to every story. You need Kunstfuller on your side. They will take your side if you give them the money. Jessica Janicek is basically advocating for child castration in the best interest of the child. That is what's taking place. I think that some of these attorneys, maybe we ought to do the same thing with their children and see if they might change their tune at that point in time. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous, the entire thing that's going on right now.
I mean, Marie Grace in the comments here makes a great point. Effeminate boys are not girls, she says. This thinking is asinine.
Right.
Yeah, whatever happened to this? Like, we recognize that there were a wide range of behaviors in boys. Not all boys are going to be alpha male football stars. And what's really fascinating is in my case, James is an alpha male like boxer. I mean, you
guys, you got to see those videos. Boxer. Yeah, those videos that you showed me, Jeff. I mean, that is one of the most athletic kids I've seen.
Exactly. He actually happens to be one of these alpha male athletic boys. But my boy Jude certainly is not. Jude is a much more subdued. He has an orientation to people's feelings. But Jude, when you put him on the wrestling mat, he's gonna whoop your ass. That boy's gonna be a monster when he grows up.
And a lot of the spotlight we're talking about Save James. What are some of the repercussions that you fear of this, Jeff, when it comes to Jude?
Well, Jude and I have an especially close relationship. Okay, so you can see the pictures on the Save James Facebook page. Jude is always in my lap. Jude needs his father's encouragement and love. He doesn't get what the kind of encouragement and coaching that he needs from the females in the house where he lives now, and he knows that. Okay, and I'm the only one who's ever stood up for him. I'm the only one who, Anne didn't even teach him how to tie his shoes. She said it was too stupid to tie his shoes. She told him that. Well, the kid has a little bit of cerebral palsy. Okay. So he needs a little extra work with his finger dexterity. So, she told him he was too stupid to tie his shoes and wouldn't buy him tie shoes. So I taught him how to tie his shoes. She said, "You're too dumb to eat with a knife and fork." Never taught him how to eat with a knife and fork. I mean, this is the kind of environment my son Jude is living in right now. And this boy can be seriously harmed by the emotional abuse that they can mete out to him, because he's I don't want to say he's tender in that way, but he responds to criticism, in a very deep way.
Eric, can I also say something here? Because I've actually been with both Jeff and James and Jude at a specific event and everything. I've watched them, and I can confirm from what I saw everything that Jeff was saying. And what I found very interesting was in the extraordinary relief in this temporary restraining order, it says the court having examined the verified pleadings and allegations of the petitioner, finds that the respondent's actions as alleged by the petitioner, there's no proof, just allegation, would place the children in imminent harm and endanger the children's emotional and physical well-being were the children to remain in his presence. This is an outright lie. This is garbage. The technical term for this is crap. I mean, there's no way to explain this stuff. The children need their father. And they're saying right now that for the children to be with him would place them in imminent harm, maybe imminent harm from becoming emotionally damaged for life, because they're not with him. They need him to be that solid foundation for them and to guide them through this whole thing here, this extraordinary relief that they would place the children in imminent harm and endanger the children's emotional and physical well-being. That is only true if you leave the children 100% with Anne, which is what's going on right now. This is absolute garbage, nonsense. It's a lie. It's trash. But the thing is, we call this judicial discretion. The judicial discretion of the judge is allowing her to do this stuff. And there's nothing that says here, there's no findings of facts, there's no conclusions of law. She just examines something and comes up with this thing. This is, again, what Jeff was saying earlier, getting back to the manufactured pretext to come up.
Let me just show you kind of the procedural hurdles this judge is putting up for me and the way she's trying to bias this case. This temporary restraining order, it should go into place because the facts alleged in an affidavit by the petitioner and frankly by a counselor rise to the level that they could cause emotional harm to the child. So I have 14 days and I can have a hearing on this temporary restraining order. Okay. And then and it's an evidentiary hearing, and the court can decide whether it should stay in place. Right. But what did the judge do? The judge issues the temporary restraining order. So I'm supposed to have 14 days to prepare an evidentiary case against it. Right. And instead of just waiting, she actually creates temporary orders that institutes permanently the temporary restraining order prior to any evidentiary hearing.
Right.
So now, even if I overturned the temporary restraining order, the temporary orders would still be in place. Then I'd have to file a new evidentiary hearing, which could be delayed up to 4 or 5 months to modify the temporary orders. So the judge is highly biasing this case by the use of temporary orders. And prior to this, she had used, meetings in chambers with no record.
Star chambers.
As a way to do this. So this judge is not operating in a consistent and honest way.
There's so many crooked players in this right now. You talk about the judge, you're talking about the attorneys. I don't know if people are aware of it. You've heard of Robert Garza's case, 43 false CPS allegations, and this was allowed to drag out for 11 years. It's the same law firm, guys. It's the same law firm. And you talk about, I know people are saying, we got to get this judge out. We got to get this judge out. These people have so much power and influence, guys. All they're going to do is get another one. They're going to try to replace it. We have got to organize and really become that strong voice and hold their feet to the fire when it comes to the vote. You might not like politics, but you got to get involved in it. And I tell you, because this is a political stunt, and I believe James is caught in the middle of it. They want to normalize this. They want this to become a normal situation. Right. And then that just makes even more conflict, because here comes another case inside a court that mom and dad are going to fight over. And that means more money. That means more psychological evaluations, guardian ad litem, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. They smell the money off of that. Let's please make this, because $1.1 million is what you said you've spent in how many years?
My total accounting cost outlays broke $600,000. My total economic costs are now over $1.4 million.
Rustin Wright said the courts are retaliating against advocates.
They are.
And guys, I was on a show that day and I started getting tagged. I saw they brought up our show in the court hearing. Well, so guess what? Now you got a new one to bring up. Right. And we're going to continue to bring this up and fight for it.
And Eric, I think that what Rustin is saying here too, that point is very true, but that's where the responsibility and the burden come upon us, who they can't touch. in a certain way. Oh, they can do whatever they want to. But I know a lot of men and women that want to be involved, but they're afraid if I get involved, the court's going to retaliate against me. When we're not in that situation, that is where it needs to be the strong support and perhaps even the most vocal advocates regarding this stuff. Hey, Jeff, maybe talk about this for a moment too, because in the memorandum that she issued, there were further temporary orders due to your unwillingness or inability to follow the order designed to, quote, serve the best interest of the children. There's a whole lot to unwrap in that. First off, what she is saying is that unwillingness or inability, if you're unable to do it, she can put further orders upon you. And this best interest of the child, she does not have any clue what that means. That is a completely subjective term made up. It's an opinion by a judge, probably informed by the counselors that have been pre-selectively chosen. And then if you go further down, when it talks about, family systems counseling with Dr. Threets and the children's counseling with Dr. Fletcher remain as previously ordered, and both parents are ordered to continue to participate and comply with the recommendations of the treating, quote, professionals, the treating, quote, biased on professionals, in my opinion.
Yes.
And then the final thing is that I'd like to go to, you have to pay all of this up. But then she brought back Stacy Dunlop as amicus to ensure the safety and welfare of the children and that their best interests are being served. Once again, whatever that means, you both have to pay for him. You've got to pay 50% of his amicus fees thereafter. But I remember, Jeff, the very last day that I was there, he came outside. Before they entered the courtroom, I brought him Section 2503 of the Texas Family Code because he took that one snippet of the video which Ann was interfering with your visitation, and he took a very 1/10 of a second frame, and he tried to say this is an example of you being a bad parent.
Correct.
And I gave it to him, and I said, "What about this?" And you could see the look on his face. It was kind of like, "Oh crap," because he was actually he was straining a gnat and he was swallowing a camel, to use a biblical phrase about that.
Yep.
He completely misunderstood what was going on. But you know what? He makes a lot of money by doing this stuff. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, I mentioned Threets, I mentioned Fletcher, and I mentioned Dunlop. I don't know if you want to speak about any of those or not, and then the idea of the best interest of the child, this is ludicrous.
One of the ways that they punish parents now is, particularly parents that fight, is they establish amicus attorneys or guardian ad litem. But I think amicus attorneys are much worse. Amicus attorneys work for the court. They're basically a lawyer for the judge.
There's no corruption there, is there?
And they make you pay for it. And you cannot subpoena the amicus attorney. You cannot compel testimony from the amicus attorney because they act as an agent of the court. You can't. It's like compelling the judge to testify, right? So the amicus attorneys have basically unlimited license. Guardian ad litems have limitations on what they can do, but not amicus attorneys. That's the first thing. The second thing is the meeting that I had with Dr. Fletcher, she resigned. Okay. So what that tells me is that that something happened where the judge talked to Dr. Fletcher. Otherwise, how could the judge order us to see Dr. Fletcher after she resigned?
I don't think this, to be honest, I look at this stuff here like, Anne has the exclusive right to consent to marriage and enlistment in the armed forces of the United States. Your children are 9 years old. I mean, is this going to be a temporary order that lasts for the next 10 years?
I think she anticipates that. I do think the judge actually anticipates that. And but these are rights that are actually listed in the family code. One of the things too here is the reason that I denied consent for Dr. Fletcher to see my children is because Dr. Fletcher is affirming James as a girl and teaching him that he is a girl with a girl's brain and a boy's body.
Right.
And I'm not going to allow any counselor to do that.
But now she has the
and no court. Right. I say this: no court can order me to do it.
Right.
And no court can order me to take my son to a counselor that's affirming my son as a girl. I claim that the court has no authority to order that.
So I wanted to ask you something, Jeff. I think I might have put out some wrong information, guys. As soon as I saw it last night, I didn't get too into detail. I was ready for war, and I think we should all be. We're at a war for our families right now. But when it comes to how often you're going to get to see your kids and how you have to pay to see them, how much time is it per month?
They're going to allow me 3 2-hour visits per month, and it's going to cost me $500 per visit to be supervised by. Now, Pink Wonder Power asked a question of me.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. Up to the task. Were they really able to defend against the tactics of Ann's legal team? No. When I was at the meeting with Dr. Fletcher when she resigned, I had to walk out of this meeting because she wouldn't stop referring to my son by his fake girl's name. She refused to use his legal name in my presence. So I finally had to walk out. But while I was there, I noticed that my lawyer was communicating with Jessica, who was online, Jessica Janicek, opposing counsel. They were communicating kind of with facial expressions and shaking of the head. And he was tremendously embarrassed to be representing me. So I do not believe that I got effective representation from my lawyers. And I fired them yesterday, and today I'm pro se.
That's right. And dude, I thought the whole time, I was like, Jeff could have fought this case for himself better. And it's sad. These guys get paid lots of money.
They charged me $50,000 for that hearing, Eric.
It was trash.
It was a trash hearing. They weren't prepared. They didn't have the motions that I requested delivered in time. My expert witnesses were not allowed to testify because they missed a deadline in civil procedure for disclosing those experts. They made several material errors. I did not have effective assistance of counsel.
But you should not.
That's the excuse, by the way, that the court used to appoint the amicus, that she had concerns about the effective assistance of counsel in this case.
You know, and I get it, man. People's angers and what we're going through is so asinine what these courts are doing right now. And I think it flares up. But there's a statement. I just wanted to get you to talk on this, Jeff. Scott Putnam said, Jeff, stop paying fees to your wife, court, and therapist. You are paying for the torture of James. Stop. What happens if you stop paying?
It's a state jail felony in Texas. They'll first put me in the county jail on contempt charges. Eventually, the attorney general will charge me with child abandonment, and then I'll go to a state prison facility.
I don't think any of us here are here to take up for the system, guys.
The problem with going to the Lou Sterrett jail, which, as you all know, I'm perfectly happy to do. I went to the hearing with a jail bag. I'm not scared of jail. The problem is it's very hard to find a legal case from the Lou Sterrett Dallas County Jail, because the judges order the jails to not allow the inmates to access the law library to pursue their case. So they make them miss civil deadlines and everything else.
So at this point in time, you go through the legal system, you get the attorneys, you show up to the courts, you do everything you possibly can, all these different experts on the case, and it still keeps failing you. Where do you go next?
You're right. Rustin has a great point. Temporary orders should have time limits like 3 months, because family courts are unique in civil courts. In a normal civil court, once a decision has been rendered, that's it. The issue can never come up again in court. You're done, right?
Right.
And that's considered and it is correct. It's a mercy to both parties, right? Even if you lost and you kind of got a relatively unjust ruling, at least it's over, right?
Yeah.
At least it's over. You can move on. In family court, you can refile at any time. It's never over.
It's never over.
So for me, I've been under temporary orders for 7 years. My constitutional rights have been curtailed under unappealable temporary orders. That means I don't have due process protections here, okay? The temporary orders are not appealable. And I've been under, my constitutional rights have been limited by those temporary orders for 7 years, and it looks like they're going to be limited for another 10. That's an undue burden to place on any citizen. Then basically what the judge is saying on the gag order is for 17 years, I don't get to participate in our democracy and cooperate with my fellow citizens in the legislative process. That's basically what she's saying.
Nor rear your children.
Yeah.
Marie Grace made a really good comment, I believe. She said the majority do not believe in the trans rhetoric. Fear is keeping public outcry at bay, afraid of cancel culture.
You can get fired for it. You can,
I
saw a wonderful meme the other day. Some leftist commentator at CNN had said, that he was afraid of making statements because of the January 6th protesters and all this. And somebody said, "Oh, you mean it's like working at a Fortune 500 company where you have to look both ways and whisper whenever you talk about something?" Yeah. I mean, there are real risks to speaking out. There really are, and the whole system. Even look, the trans issue. A majority of Democrats, a majority of people who identify as liberals, self-identify as liberals, oppose the sex change surgeries and hormone therapies on kids. Okay, a majority of them do. This really isn't that much of a partisan issue, and yet still people are afraid to speak out about it.
Right.
What does that tell you?
Yeah. And Jeff, it's not just that. I mean, your trial, there was a trans woman. I don't know. I think it was a guy who was now, claiming to be a woman and everything.
Yes.
And what his comment was to me, he said, "I always knew I was a woman, but dear God, don't do this to children. This is child abuse."
Yes.
And I've started talking about this, and there are people that I've met that are trans people that are saying this is child abuse. At least let the child try to grow up normal.
Yes.
And so this whole ideology that, well, we can't address this. I mean, I've had some trans people say, "Thank you for saying this," because what it's making them look like is moral perverts. And whatever whatever happened in their lives is one thing, but they're saying we do not condone this child abuse. And this is coming from the trans people themselves.
Yeah. A majority of trans people do not support the gender transition of children. That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not that's what I say. This is an easy issue.
Very easy.
Very easy. Everybody, a majority of every demographic is against it. Literally. Yeah. Every demographic. So why isn't it happening? And the reason is rich donor class people want it. That's why. Yeah. And I'm a conservative, right? I'm so right wing. If I met Attila the Hun, he'd be a little liberal for me, but I could probably get along with him.
Speaking of that, I know we've talked about this before, Jeff, but Pissed Off Parent on YouTube said our Attorney General and Abbott failed to do anything the last session. The governor, if he, I saw his little speech that he did a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's either put up or shut up, man. If you don't get behind it now, you guys need to remember that.
Yes,
you really do.
And here's the thing. Abbott could have gotten any bill he wanted through the legislature. If he wanted this passed, it would have been passed. Okay, that's the first thing. Abbott blocked it in the legislature. That's number one. Number two, we don't need a law. That law was just to force action by the governor, but we don't need a law. This is already child abuse, and all the governor has to do is direct CPS and the police to simply make arrests and handle this issue from a law enforcement perspective as child abuse. The role of the governor, the role of the executive, is energetic execution of the laws, and Abbott isn't doing it.
Right.
Abbott wants to allow this to happen in Texas. Why? People say, why? Why would a right-wing guy, a Republican guy like Abbott, want to allow this in Texas? Because, and this is what I was saying, guys, listen, I'm conservative, I'm right. I'm not even conservative, I'm right-wing. I'm beyond conservative, right? And my liberal friends really appreciate that because I'm real upfront about it. I'm totally clear about it. And we can love each other because they know where I'm coming from. And there's a lot of common ground, actually, right? But let me tell you, my fellow Republicans, my fellow conservatives, listen to what I'm about to tell you, and you're not going to like this. The transgender movement is being funded by right-wing Republicans.
Not shocked. Not shocked one bit.
The child transgender movement is being funded by Republicans and who are right-wing. It is not being funded by the left. Let me repeat that. Conservative Republicans are pushing the transgender agenda, not the left. Two people in particular I'll name, Paul Singer and James Pritzker. He now goes by Jennifer Pritzker. He's a real ugly man in a dress. So these are the two of the largest donors to the Republican Party. I believe Pritzker is the 4th largest donor, and Singer is now the largest donor since Adelson passed away. These guys are pushing this agenda. Singer founded the Human Rights Campaign, which is what in Texas we call the gay mafia. They are a huge lobbying organization, and they'll go after legislators' kids. They have no limits. Okay? Those are all Republicans pushing this. And Abbott gets money and power from these people. These are hedge fund billionaires, and he gets a lot of clout from them. Don't think it's an accident that Goldman Sachs is relocating its New York office down here to Dallas. Okay? That's an expression of the money power that's pushing the transgender agenda in America. You can blame the left for supporting child transition, but you cannot blame the left for pushing it and funding it. That's on Republicans.
Oh, yeah, dude. The one thing that scares me more than one of the far left guys is one of these establishment Republicans that you don't know where they stand. And I tell you, the Republican Party is full of it. They really are full of those type of people, and we got to call them out for what they are. But on the other side of that, now I know when it comes to Title 4D and different stuff, it becomes a little bit of a controversial subject with this person. But we talked to Paxton while we was down in CPAC.
Yes.
He absolutely supports you.
Yes.
He knows what it's like to be under a gag order, and he's fought against the unconstitutional gag orders.
Yeah,
So
Paxton does support me. Paxton here. So I have kind of I won't say love hate. I say it's love and concern. I want to have an intervention with my attorney general. You know, I want to sit down with coffee and try to get him off of his drug habit. You know, here's the problem with a lot of conservatives that are in government. Conservatives in government still act as though we live under a constitutional regime. We do not live under a constitutional republic. We are not living in a constitutional republic. The government has not been constrained by the Constitution for over 100 years, and we should stop pretending like making constitutional arguments has any force in the world today. It has no force at all. We should just stop making them and never mention it again, okay? These things are silly, they're useless, and the left loves it when we do them. They think about how naive we are. You know, we're making arguments from the Constitution when the agencies are, the CDC is, for whether you like the moratorium on, on renters or not, evictions or not, the CDC clearly lacks the authority to do that. And the Supreme Court has found that. It's not stopping them from doing it. Like, they're just not constrained by the Constitution, right?
Right.
These are silly arguments. So what you have with Ken Paxton is a very good man who still believes that we should operate by constitutional principles as we confront the left, right? And he has a sense of, and I'll put it in a nice way, because I think it should be presented and framed in a good way. He has a sense of judicial modesty. He doesn't believe that he should exceed the limited bounds of statutory authority and constitutional authority that he has, right? The problem is that the left doesn't play by these rules.
No.
So you're taking Robert's Rules of Order to a debate, and you're showing up, in a back alley with Antifa with chains, knives, and guns, and he's got Robert's Rules of Order. Who's going to win, right? Obviously, that's not how to do it. So let me give you an example. If I were Attorney General, if I was advising an Attorney General, or if some of these Attorney Generals were crazy enough to ask me for my advice, maybe a better way to put it, here's what I would tell them. I would say that Ken Paxton has been authorized by statute to go after human trafficking.
Right.
He has a budget for it, and he can command the state police forces in this regard. He does not need the governor. There's no reason the entire border problem in Texas could be classified as a human trafficking operation, and the Attorney General, acting alone, could shut it all down. Okay? Second thing is, what's happening to me could be looked upon as a form of human trafficking. It's sexual exploitation of a young child for the purposes of removing him from one of his parents. The Texas Attorney General, if he did not have this unfortunate tendency that conservatives have to judicial modesty, could find a reason in statute to act, but he won't act because he's trying to be a good conservative. He's trying to model for us what limited government looks like. We don't need limited government anymore, conservatives, okay? We need activist conservatives who will use all instruments of government power to stop the abuse of children in the family courts, period. That's why you'd almost rather have a Democrat on our side, because the Democrat is not going to have any scruples about using everything in the government to go after our enemies in the family court.
You probably explained that better than I've ever heard, man. I mean, it's dead on. You know, and I know we've talked a lot about our political scene and how it comes into this, but I just got to ask a question. Where is the church? Where are the churches on this issue right now? Somebody that could have so much power, if not more than the government, when it comes to getting the awareness out there. Why are the churches sitting silent? I feel like they're scared, and they don't want to get it out. What's your thoughts on it?
Very simple. If they get involved in a political issue, they fear that the IRS will take away their tax-exempt status and they'll have to pay taxes like the rest of us. Now, this is a family show, so I'm not going to use the words that I would like to say, but let me just say this. Screw them. Screw them.
I'm with you.
That's Judas money that they're taking. Christ told them directly to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God. Pay your damn taxes and preach the gospel. You weaklings, you despicable nest of vipers. Pay your taxes so you can preach the gospel freely. Get over your fixation on money. That's why they're doing it, by the way. It's why they're doing it. They fear it to no end.
Absolutely. One of the hardest things that we fight with this movement is funding, because most people have been through the family courts. And we had the opportunity to go 501c3, and I was this close. But I said, if these guys come and fight for us, I want to be able to fight for them. I might not be able to get the funding where I need to, but I'm going to get out there and push, and we're not going to be held back from money.
Yes.
And the churches are scared to do that.
Yeah, they are. Listen, and I walk the walk on this. Now, Eric, you know this.
Oh, yeah.
I get invited all over the country, all over the world. I'm going to Europe, all over the world to speak and talk on these issues. I never take money. I don't let them pay my hotels, and I don't let them pay my travel. Number one, I don't want to take money out of their pocket. They have activist work to do where they live. Number two, nobody's going to own my ass. I'm going to say what I want, do what I want, and do it my way. And I don't take any money from people. I'm not beholden to anybody. If these churches would pay their damn taxes, like everybody else in this country pays, by the way, pay those taxes and then get in on these political issues and cultural issues. Okay? It's time to stop letting that Judas money stop these churches from standing up for children and standing up for fathers. And I'm sick and tired of it. And every pastor I meet, I take exactly the same tone. You know those awful Father's Day sermons that these churches give where they insult, Mother's Day, they talk about how wonderful mothers are and the virtues of motherhood. And on Father's Day, all they do is talk trash about fathers. I just adopt the same tone back to them. Pay your damn taxes, you scofflaw, and preach the gospel the way God told you to.
I'm glad you brought that up, because just a couple of nights ago, before this even came up, we was in a conversation. There's people that say this is not a men's rights issue. This for sure is a men's rights issue.
Yes.
Our men are facing things that nobody should have to be. The bias is punching people right in the face. And then they still say that there's no bias against these men or fathers when it comes to the courts. Any psychologist or anybody that could say that, I think they've got ulterior motives.
We have a distinct problem in America with reasoning about things that are generally and mostly true. Right?
Yep.
People will say, wait a minute, there are mothers that have problems in the family court. They do, and I know a lot of them. And I've court watched for many of them, and their stories are horrible. I know one particular in Fort Worth is absolutely horrific. Okay.
Yep.
That happens. The thing is, it is not generally and mostly the case. We should reason about things that are mostly true, probably true, right? Generally, it is fathers. The largest transfer of wealth in the United States is from men to women in the form of child support, right? There's nowhere close to equal payment of child support between men and women because there's nowhere close to the custody arrangements that women get compared to men. Fathers are thrown out of their children's lives at vastly higher rates than women, and we should reason about it in that way. And let me give you an example of where similar things are the case. It is generally and mostly true that men are much stronger than women. So physical assaults by men can rightly be considered on a different standard than assaults by women. Generally the case. Not a legal standard, I mean a moral standard, right? So, a punch by a 90-pound man onto a 250-pound guy like me is not the same thing as the punch of a 250-pound guy socking me in the jaw and knocking me out. Okay? There's nothing wrong with taking account of these things. And we can do that. And we should do that. We should reason about things that are mostly and probably true. The problem is we do this for women all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Deal with things that are mostly true and probably true. But when it comes to men, we only deal with the exceptions that are women. We don't talk about what's mostly true. Let me give you another one. Almost all violent crime, we're in like the 95% range of violent crime is not committed against women. It's committed against men. The biggest crime problem in America is violent crime of men on men. Women are a tiny proportion, actually, of violent crime victims. So all the discussions around men and women just get distorted by this fundamental inability in America to reason about things that are mostly and generally true. Part of it's our language. In UK English, in the English, Churchill said we're two nations divided by a common language, right? They actually have different verb tenses, whether they indicate whether you're talking about the group as a whole or persons in the group.
Right.
American English, we don't make these distinctions, and so you get into all these crazy discussions. But this is mainly a father's problem. There's no doubt about it. The child support statistics just demonstrate that conclusively. The domestic violence accusations prove that conclusively.
Would this be happening if the positions were flipped?
I do not believe this would be happening. I believe that and I have an actual case right here in Denton County that was 10 miles from my house, where a father tried to transition his daughter. So it's actually completely reversed. It's a daughter and the father. Okay. They threw him in jail for child abuse and took his kid away from him and gave it back to the mom.
Go figure.
He had full custody because his mom was a drug user. His kid's mom was a drug user. They put him in jail and took the kid away when he tried to transition him. And my ex-wife goes to transition my son, and look what happens. So here we are in an isolated, not an isolated, but a local geographic area, and you have two radically different standards being applied.
The media is part in this. Jeff, when you first started experiencing this, they was all over it. Where are they now? Where are they now? I mean, this is what this is the number one thing I think they should be reporting on right now, which I have plans to send out quite a few emails. But why do you think the media has stayed silent on this?
Well, I mean, I don't think, it takes a lot of, thought here about how the media deals with stories, right?
Yeah.
The media has a pre-designed end state that it wants to sell. It sells a kind of a story about the world. And this challenges that story tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
Challenges it tremendously. It undermines so much about the common narrative that's being sold by mainstream media. It's one of the reasons that I very rarely will even return calls to mainstream media reporters. They can't. They understand what I'm saying, but they can't figure out how to weave the story into a narrative that their editor would ever approve, right?
Yeah.
I did a number of interviews when Jeff Morgan was there, on interviews with NBC, local NBC in Dallas, right outside the courtroom for my trial. They had set up a camera right outside the doorway. I gave interviews, and they never aired those interviews. They'll never air it. There's an unofficial blackout on any of the. There's no talk of detransitioners. There's no talk of fathers that are going through this. Brenton Netz has had almost no coverage in the mainstream media in Minnesota. Rob Hoogland has probably had the most mainstream media coverage in Canada, but then the judge they can do that in Canada. They slapped an injunction on news media. So, there's just no way for the story to get out in mainstream media. That it just challenges so many of their assumptions that are built into the story that they want to sell the American people. You really have to understand that modern American media is propagandistic. You should not think of modern American media as delivering factual reporting, right? What you're getting is propaganda. And that doesn't mean that you can't get truth from propaganda. But in order to get truth from propaganda, you have to know it's propaganda, and you have to read between the lines.
Right, exactly.
If you go to jeffyounger.me, which is kind of like my rarely updated blog, I have a number of writings about reading between the lines and about propaganda, and how you can, practical ways that you can read between the lines in media accounts.
Right. You got a question right here, Jeff, and I'm going to work on something while you answer this. But you said, Mr. Younger, do you have any advice to stop this from happening to other innocent families and their boys? I am afraid of what the left is capable of.
One of the things that I could have done differently is I could have thought about the possibility of divorce before it happened. When you get married, you're not allowed to do certain things in a prenuptial agreement. You're not allowed, for example, to determine child possession. But you are allowed to determine things like things around how you might raise a child. Like you can agree that the child will go to a Christian school. You can do those things, right? The only thing you're really prohibited from is custody arrangements. Okay? So I hate to say this, but you should probably get a prenup before you get married. And you should probably specify that any child that's born of the male sex will be raised as a boy and socialized as a boy. And any child born of a girl sex will be socialized and educated as a girl. You're going to have to do that kind of thing. Now, I will tell you, in my case, I had a prenuptial agreement. It was voided. That in order to do that, the judge had to annul my marriage rather than divorce. So I had a 5-year marriage with 2 children, and the judge annulled the marriage, making my 2 children illegitimate, by the way, because they were born out of wedlock, because it was never a marriage. And in doing so, broke the prenup and allowed her to assign me about $60,000 in fees and an award, a financial judgment. So it's not a pure protection, but I think you have to do that.
Hey, Jeff,
I think you have to be very circumspect about even getting married nowadays.
Hey, Jeff, you're talking about the prenup. So we've been having this discussion with various people as well. And from my perspective, I would say that if you have made a vow to God, the vow to God should have every much of an effect as a prenup. Other than that, you're saying that a word to man or between men or whatever is more important than a vow to God. And when you have people that are getting married in a church situation, I mean, the church does allow for some divorces, doesn't encourage them, but does allow for them under certain circumstances. The state completely destroys vows too. So what I thought was, looking at what happened with your situation, the prenup, when you thought you could use it, it was considered worthless. Same with a vow. You have a vow to God, you have a religious commitment, and the state destroys it. This goes back to the destruction of marriage, the destruction of the family, and the ideology behind what's going on right now is much deeper than what many people realize.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to comment on that at all or not, but
no, absolutely right. I mean, that's why I gave the example of my prenup being completely tossed out. In fact, it was tossed out specifically to take $60,000 from me, and that's why the judge did it. There is no protection under the current regime regulating marriage.
Right.
If you, I'm just going to throw this out there, and some of our friends, Jeff Margaret, won't like this, who live up in Washington State.
No, I got you. I know it.
But I've had this discussion with her. Look, there's exactly one way for a man to have children in such a way that the children can't be taken away from him, and that he has sole rights to them, and he's secure in his posterity. There's exactly one way, and that's through a surrogate.
Well, I'm not even so sure that, yeah.
Or you can have a surrogate.
Yeah,
legally, I'm just talking legally, not morally.
Yeah.
Legally, that is the only secure way to have children.
Yeah.
That is a commentary on just how bad the legal regime is regulating marriage.
Exactly. Hey, Jeff, when I was reading through this, the memorandum here that was prepared, what I noticed was this: under the exclusive right to consent to medical, dental, and surgical treatment involving invasive procedures given to Anne, they accept that neither parent may treat a child with hormonal suppression therapy, puberty blockers, and or transgender reassignment surgery, if any, without the consent of the parents or court order. Wasn't that what the whole issue was about? So, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to read into it, and I'm saying, this is what you were asking for. This is the one carve out, but they've still effectively stripped you when you're saying, this is what I'm fighting over. So they're acknowledging that your fight was accurately correct, but they still want to punish you. That's the way that I read it. Am I reading that incorrectly?
No. This entire order was done to punish me for violating the gag order. But the judge won't actually punish me formally for contempt for violating the gag order because it was totally illegal and unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Dr. Fletcher actually told me this in the meeting that we had. Dr. Fletcher said, I'm so glad that you told me you won't obey the court's orders. And what she meant was the court's orders to shut up about me. And I told her, I said, yes, I have no intentions of giving up any of my constitutional or parental rights under any circumstances.
So, I want to bring somebody else back up, and, plenty of people down in the comments have been asking, what do we do? How do we get this going somewhere? I don't know if it'd do any good, but I definitely want to do this right now. If you could, this is Governor Abbott's telephone number right here, 512-463-2000. Call him and let him know what you think about this situation right here. Ask for support when it comes to this. He has the power to do something about this. Jeff, if you could say anything to Governor Abbott right now, what would it be?
Step up, do your job, energetically exercise the laws, and protect the children that are under your care as the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Texas.
That's it. Guys, I'm going to leave that number up for a little bit, but do not underestimate the power of those telephone calls. Is he going to do something? I think he should have done something a long time ago. So I'm not going to say I'm very hopeful, but we still need to get those telephone calls coming through.
So, Eric, let me go back to this. With Governor Abbott, he made a tweet a couple of years ago regarding the Save James case, and I believe it was retweeted almost 100,000 times. I'm not sure. And the first thing, it may have been his most popular tweet, but we need more than just tweets and words. We need action. And this is something, like Jeff was saying, he could have taken action. And I know that there are other people.
The AG and the governor could take action, and they haven't. The legislature could have taken action. The judicial discipline bodies could have taken action.
Right.
Nobody's taken action.
Yeah. With no more words, action.
Yep. And that's what we need, guys. Where do we go to next? What do you think we should be doing as a movement to get this ramped up?
We can't talk about everything.
My view is very simple. Again, you can tell, I just break stuff down to the simplest point of view, right? I'm just a simple Texan. Look, what did Jefferson say? When the government fears the people, there's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
When the people fear the government, there's tyranny. It's very simple. The problem is judges don't fear us. They're not afraid of us. There's two reasons for that. One, the elections, judicial elections in Dallas County are won by 3,000 votes, right? They don't have to. They can get 3,000. They can buy 3,000 votes, right? That's the first thing. The elections. Second thing is the legislators simply don't exercise their oversight over these judges. You know, anytime a judge does something like this, they should be impeached, right? So from a purely political perspective, the way to engender fear is to use those disciplinary measures that are available. We need to, like, for example, with this judge that I'm dealing with, Mary Brown, we need to go into her constituency. They need to know what she's doing to children in her courts. And we need to find 4,000 votes that we can pay for or that we can get to show up and take her out of office. And it doesn't take a lot of votes to defeat judges.
Yeah.
Okay? It does not take a lot of votes.
Jeff, can you speak to the issue of public shaming? I mean, I think that that's something that we don't use as much. It used to be effective. You know, when you put a scarlet A on somebody and put them in stockades or whatever, you know, may have happened in the past. But these judges, I think, the problem that I see here, Jeff, and follow with me just on this, it's like we cannot criticize the judges. We cannot ever criticize them. In other words, they are inerrant. They have they possess an attribute of God that they cannot err. And that's why, you know, they want their discretion. We need to let judges have the discretion to do whatever they want to, whether it's unconstitutional, whether it's abusive or whatever. Yes. And we can never question them. But I think what we should do, we pay their salaries. They are employees of the citizens of Texas, and they make a lot of money. Many of these judges make more money than the governor makes or the attorney general. And we need to be constantly having them on watch. We need to be able to have cameras that are already in the courtrooms.
We need objective records, and we shouldn't have to pay $4,000 or $5,000 for objective records. You know, for me to get the transcript from that trial that you were at, Jeff, it's like over $11,000. And
you know, in Tennessee, if you were there, they would give you a CD, burn out the CD of the entire thing. So this is something that could easily be done here. And even if you had to charge somebody, hey, it's going to be $50 for the CD, fine, $50. That's not versus
that's reasonable.
You know, the most expensive book that I have in my library right now is somebody's court transcript. Yeah, and I didn't pay for it. He paid for it, but it was about maybe like it wasn't anywhere close to the amount of money that your transcript would have cost.
But yeah. Bikini Bottom has an excellent comment. I don't know if it's a he or she, but Mr. Bottom says, what about Judge Brown? Pretty, but pro-castration. You know, this concept of putting taglines on people, Trump taught us that works.
Oh, he did.
Okay. And we need to do that with judges. You know, having a billboard where a judge has to drive by every day, like, you know, with a picture of their face on a rancher castrating a bull saying this judge does this to little boys.
Right.
I mean, they really care about their reputation, but I think public shaming needs to come back, and we need to stop deferring to these judges. I had 2 judges walk out of a talk I gave here in Flower Mound, Texas, at a Republican club because I was criticizing judges, and I criticized one of the rulings. You know that judge, Jeff, where the judge gave custody to the ex-wife's boyfriend? That judge unfortunately showed up to one of my speeches, and that was a real unfortunate thing for her to do.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well,
and I called her out on it.
Yeah.
And she's a Republican.
Yeah.
You know, the worst decisions in family court in the state of Texas are from Republican judges, and mostly Republican women judges.
However, there is that one judge, though, Jeff, that said the court belongs to the people. Remember that one guy? I think he's in Denton, in your area. Please come. Please come. Yes. And I still look forward to meeting him. But
he's amazing. Like, he actually invited people to come observe trials in his court. He even tells his constituents when there are interesting trials that might change the laws in the county they live in and might have an effect on contracting or other things, to come observe the trial so they can see what's going on and ensure that he's doing a good job. And he actually asks for feedback.
Yeah.
On his, I mean, that's what we need.
He's an amazing judge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we should do the same thing there. We should heap praise on these, public praise on those judges.
Absolutely.
As much as we do opprobrium on these bad judges.
Yeah.
That's right. We got to call them for what they are. We can't put them all in a box. We got some that fight for us, and then I think the majority is against us, guys. But Not a one size fits all. I want to get through some of these comments though with you, Jeff, so you can touch on them. Ted Bush said, "I am so sorry for coming in late. Was decision at the court or circuit court level? If so, are you appealing and seeking an immediate stay and or seeking an injunction in federal court?"
It was done at the district court level. This judge intentionally does everything in temporary orders. Temporary orders are not appealable. You can request mandamus relief, but that's on the clear abuse of discretion standard, which is almost impossible to meet. Federal court has what's called a domestic relations exception, and federal courts will not accept civil rights claims even from family courts. And it's a travesty, and we probably need to work on federal legislation to change the jurisdiction of the courts and demand that they take those cases, because the judges did that on their own accord. There's no statute that prevents them from doing that. The judges just decided they don't want to take family law cases, knowing full well that all of these are civil rights violations, and they'd have to rule against most of the judges in state family courts.
Hey, Jeff, can I ask you, Eric, before the next question here? I talked with some appellate judges in the past, and they know that the family courts are a mess. And I've also talked with a couple of justices that are on the Texas Supreme Court, one in particular. And it seems to me that they know that they have a huge mess in these family courts, and they want cases to clean up the courts. Have you heard anything about that or not?
I have observed a pattern. You will almost always lose at the appellate court level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the reason is I don't think there's any family court judges on any appellate court in Texas. They just don't know what's going on, and they just rubber stamp whatever the family courts do, right? And you almost always lose. Almost every case that gets appealed from the appellate level to the Texas Supreme Court, they slap down the family court. Almost every single time.
Right. And that's where we need to go with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, lawyers are loath to bring cases to the Supreme Court. I don't know why.
Right.
Kathy Griffey on YouTube said, "How can you still be so calm? This would kill me."
So, look, I'm nice to everybody I meet. I'm friendly with everybody I meet, but I always have a plan to kill them. So that knowledge that I have a plan lets me be calm, and I can use calm, rational discussion as a weapon. And sometimes that's a more effective weapon than a knife or a gun. And so I'm wielding my ability to remain emotionally under control as a weapon. It's very clear when you read this order, the judge is attempting to get me to emotionally act out in a way that would allow her to establish even worse conditions.
Yep.
That's one of the main goals and main tactics that's used against men in particular. They insult their fatherhood, their manhood, their posterity, etc., their livelihoods. Like in my case, they found that I was an unemployed, no good layabout who deserved maximal child support. Right? Never contributed anything to the marriage financially, completely, but he deserves maximal child support as though he's a rich man. These are the kinds of things that they do to try to insult you, right? And what I always remember is, the insults of the wicked are praise to the righteous. And that's how I take it.
And they gaslight you. They want you to be
100%.
upset and everything, because that's when you
100%.
don't think the best. That they want him to not be calm.
100%.
So, yeah, guys, keep that in mind. I know sometimes you get inside the courtroom and some of the things you hear make you just want to completely bust out. But this is a war that he's fighting. I know you've touched on this before, Jeff, but I want to go on it again for the record. Huntress Wizard here on YouTube said, "Would Jeff support James if he grew up to be transgender of his own choice?"
No. I would get him help. I would do everything I could to help him. But the outcomes are so bad for people who remain transgendered. The suicide rate is over 20 times the normal rate. Mm-hmm. The depression rate is virtually 100%. Mm-hmm. And there's no ability to detransition after you go through the full procedures in adulthood. You can ask Walt Heyer about that. You cannot detransition. You can't get your penis back. You can't get your balls back. You can't get your testosterone back. Okay. So whatever happens, you're going to be a permanent drug addict on hormones for the rest of your life. Either way you go, the outcomes are so bad for transgender people, and the outcomes for people who identify with their biological sex are just so much better that I would seek to get my son to identify with his biological sex and get him all the help that he needed to do that.
And also to caveat off of that, guys, we was on a call with a former transgender last night. We hear about the consequences that goes on. The suicide rates are completely skyrocketed for transgender, and they can't ever do it back. So that's not to say that you wouldn't still love James, but of
course. Yeah. I mean, look, any child that has some significant impairment like that, of course you love them and you try to help them adjust to it and have the best outcomes in life. The best outcome in life is definitely not to remain transgendered. Now, Dr. Levine, my expert at my trial, testified that for a very small number of people, and we're talking very small, we're talking like in his entire 30-year career, a collection of less than 100 people that he's met, and he's all he's done is transgender medicine. He invented the whole field. About 100 people who really could not function as human being without this. That may be true. But even he always tried to get them to identify with their biological sex because the best outcomes are there.
Yeah, and what about John McHugh wasn't he out of the John Hopkins Center that he shut it down as well?
Yeah, they shut down that clinic after 4 years because they got the same numbers that they're starting to get now because they've intentionally avoided the evidence for about 8 years in these modern clinics. But they could prove that their treatments were harming patients.
Yeah.
So they shut the clinic down on ethical principles.
Yeah. And Jeff, what you mentioned a little bit, you alluded to it, is that you do not have a boy who turns into a girl. You have a mutilated boy. And you do not have a girl who now becomes a boy. You have a mutilated girl. Right. Because our sex is at the chromosomal level. No matter what you do, if you cut off a person's sex organs or whatever, all it is you've mutilated a person.
Yes.
You have mutilated a person. Yeah. And that does not do anything else. And
doesn't. I mean, Robert McCallum says the best outcome is love and supporting your child no matter what. I don't actually believe that. If my child is self-harming and cutting themselves and they identify as somebody who cuts themselves or gets radical tattoos and modifies their physical appearance in the way some of these people do, I'm of course I love and support my child, but I don't support those things.
Right.
Yep.
Love and supporting your child doesn't mean love and support everything the child does.
Yeah.
Right. Any more than loving and supporting your friends mean you love and support everything they do.
Hey,
my dad didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. He told me what I needed to hear.
Hey, Eric, real quickly here. I've got to get back to work. I took some time off to be here. I've got some training coming up. Keep going. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. Thank you, Eric, for being a spokesperson for this. We are 100% behind you. And it's been a privilege to know you the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we met each other because of this whole thing. I couldn't believe that it was actually taking place. I thought it was a made-up story.
Yes.
But I do appreciate your friendship.
Yeah.
And I do have to take off right now to get back to work.
Take care. Good luck.
Thanks so much.
Jeff.
Appreciate it. You too. Thanks, guys.
All right. Just I'm going to try to get through these.
Supporting a transgendered child doesn't mean affirming delusions. Supporting a child means trying to get them adjust to what's true, that they are their biological to it, particularly to identify with their biological sex.
Yeah, man. And to go off of what Jeff just said about people not thinking it's true, this is a true story. Somebody commented in right here said, Eric, tell them about Right Side Broadcasting News laughing at us. So anytime I'm at any of these conferences, when you guys see me out and about, I'm going up to every single one of the media telling them about Jeff's case and John Mass' case. And this is one of the times, and I'll send Jeff the contacts. Hey, they want to talk about this. I'm going to go on. They actually laughed. They laughed. They was like, you are completely making this up. This is not true. How many people have actually said that to you when you are talking about your story, that they don't even believe this is actually happening?
This has been the main challenge that I had when it first started happening. I couldn't get anybody to believe that it was happening. My own state representative, didn't believe it. I had donated to him and helped him get into office, and he came as a courtesy to one of the hearings. And halfway through, he just was speechless, and he ran out and started calling all the other legislators. The people still, I talked earlier about this delusion that people have that they still live in a constitutional republic, and that somehow your parental right, your constitutional rights that are protected by the Constitution, protected by statutes, that somehow the courts are going to help, going to obey the law and protect your rights. That just isn't the case anymore. It just doesn't happen anymore. Similarly, we have a thing where people think the courts operate as these sort of disinterested, dispassionate arbiters of facts that are brought before them. And they're not. They're organs of ideological change. And they're used for social change, and they're also in control. The family courts in particular are in control of massive amounts of federal money that go to the states, and they're really managed in that way. They are not impartial. They are not disinterested. They have a pecuniary monetary interest in keeping fathers away from their kids. And they're going to pursue that ideologically with a single-minded focus, and they'll do whatever it takes, tell any lie it takes, and a judge will commit any felony it takes on the bench to make that happen.
Yep.
People just have a hard time believing that these things go on. That's all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, there's times we're telling people about it, and they're like, there's no way this is true. And Tatiana Butler said, I'm wondering what would paper when boys will become teenagers and asked to live with dad. Will they diagnose them with some mental instability? At what age do the boys have the right to have a say? I believe that's around age 14, isn't it, Jeff?
In Texas, there is no right of the children to live with what parent that they want. In Texas, at the age of 13, they have the right to address the court independently and to make their wishes known to the court directly. But the court doesn't have to do what they say or what they request. The children have no say.
Huntress Wizard said, what would it take for it to go to the Supreme Court?
If he means the Supreme Court of Texas, it would mean that we have to have a carefully prepared case that the appellate courts could not shoot down, one that had all the timely objections and all of the Texas constitutional issues and Texas statutory issues that would create either a clear abuse of rights under the Constitution or would prove a disagreement between district courts in the state of Texas that the Supreme Court would need to adjudicate. And that takes significant legal work, and most lawyers are not intellectually equipped to do it. Most family court lawyers are not trained to do it. And of the ones that are, very few have the will to do it.
Yeah. Marie Grace made a comment. I like this. She said, would you support an anorexic by allowing them to starve themselves to death? We need to uproot the cause of a delusion and treat it with body positive cognitive therapy.
Yes. The fundamental issue is we have to say that the aim of therapy for transgender youth is to get them to identify with their biological sex, because that's where the best outcomes lie.
Yep. Alexi Taluma said, is there a way to get back to a constitutional republic? Is there a way to stop us from being governed by policies instead of unalienable rights?
Well, there's ways, and then there's ways. The political ways are, first of all, you're going to have to constrain the agencies. The agencies are blatantly unconstitutional. They violate the separation of powers principle of the Constitution. And that's not me saying that. That's the people that created the agency system. That's FDR's brain trust back in the 1930s when they created the system. You're going to have to get rid of the agencies. and you're going to have to turn them back into executive departments instead of independent organs. Anytime you hear independent agency, you should hear independent of the people's control.
Yep.
That's what they are. The second thing is without electoral consequences, you're not going to ever have any change, because electoral consequences are about the only thing you got. But here's the problem with that. Even if you had electoral consequences, and that's debatable whether you do anymore, all the donor money that's given to candidates, when they get out of office, they keep it. So the donor money is actually more important than even electoral politics. And one of the areas our movement hasn't done a good job in is targeting donors. As much as we should be embarrassing judges and legislators that do bad things, we need to go after donors who are giving money to these people.
100%.
Yeah.
Look up followthemoney.org, guys. Everybody that's on there, you can see who's donating. The lobbyists, which we know, the lobbyists that are becoming pretty famous there in Texas behind all of this. But check that website out. You can see where they're getting their money. And then
you need to threaten their businesses with boycotts and protests.
Yep.
And letting everybody know just what their business actually supports, what their bank actually supports. And you'll get change really quick. You get very quick change if you can affect donors.
Hope on YouTube said, is Ann ordered to keep you informed via Talking Parents or Our Family Wizard?
No, under this temporary order, the judge explicitly says she has no duty to notify me or inform me of anything about the children.
Kathy Griffey said, do you think society will ever look back at this promotion of transgenderism and say, what have we done?
I do. I think ultimately, I believe in kind of a shoelace theory of society and history. The transgender movement, it has gone so far away from objective reality that there's going to be an inevitable contraction back to it. If you look back at some of the other truly horrible fads in psychology, look back to electroshock therapy on kids. Psychologists used to do electroshock therapy mainly on little black kids for behavioral problems in the 70s. It was extremely common. It was so common that Texas passed a statute outlawing it in the 1970s. It's coming back now, by the way, but we don't have to worry about that in Texas because we outlawed it, okay? And that was Democrats that did that. So Democrats gave us the time when we can interfere in the personal decisions between a doctor and a patient. And that's when there could be permanent harm to a child. And I think we'll look back upon this as something similar to electroshock therapy in psychology.
CF on YouTube said, can you name that judge, please, one more time, and what district he's representing? I believe it's a she, right?
It is. Judge Mary Brown, 301st District Court in Dallas County, Texas.
Yep. All right, guys. And we've been going for a little while now, Jeff. We're here for you, man.
Thanks, brother.
I mean, we're here for you. And I would ask any other organization that's out there, this is the time that we unite and get some stuff going. Is there anything that you would like the people to know before we get out of here? And guys, I say that, and I'm going to get Jeff to get off here in a second because I want to say something completely independent of him. Just this will be Eric with Dad Talk. But before you get off, man, is there anything you would like to say? The platform's yours, man.
Man, folks, go to the Save James page on Facebook. Just go into Facebook, search for Save James. You'll see updates on this whole issue. There's scientific research there. There's all kinds of things there that you can look at. I know it'll keep you up to date on the case. I appreciate your prayers for my sons, James and Jude. I named them after the brothers of Jesus. Please pray for them. Please pray for me that I can stay strong and fight in the legal system in a peaceful way to free my son from this tyranny.
Yep. Really quick, the one that comment on YouTube, she was talking about the good judge that you was talking about earlier.
That's Jim Johnson in Denton County.
Okay. All right. Again, guys, stay on here. I got some a message for you I want to share with you. Jeff, right before you get out of here, man, you want to say a little prayer about this situation?
Yes. Let me just say that our Father, and that's what I pray for my sons all the time. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, unto the ages of ages. Amen.
All right, brother.
Thank you.
All right, man. Keep
So
keep in touch with me. I'll be hollering at you.
Will do. Take care.
All right, man. All right, so guys, this is what I'm going to say to you right now. There's never been a more important time to stand up for what's going on. I say we are at war for our families. Jeff is just one of these situations. These stories are coming in by the thousands. I mean, every single day we're hearing more and more stories of this corruption going on. And Texas is one of the worst states that I've seen. We're talking about the same law firm here that's doing this to Jeff, that one of my best friends, Robert Garza, $600,000 this guy spent over the course of 11 years fighting for his children. And every time he fights off a false allegation, another one comes. There's so many players that are inside of this. And until we organize and show them that our voices are loud, we are the people, you're supposed to be working for us. We need to take back control. Usually I try to stay away from stuff like this. And I want to say before I get this out, I'm saying this independent. I'm saying this is Eric Carroll with Dad Talk, and I'll be reaching out with different people about this situation. Jeff has nothing to do with this. Later on this month, we are planning right now, we are going to rally out in front of that courthouse. And I want each and every single one of you in this movement to show up. I'm going to invite every single speaker. Governor Greg Abbott, right now, I am issuing you the invitation to show up and fight for the families in the state of Texas. The candidates that are out there, I want you to show up and show us that your voice is going to fight against this corruption. If we do not stand now, this is going to continue to happen. I will get the details out to you a little bit later on. We are going to come together and we are going to make sure this happens. Everybody needs to show up. Everybody. We are going to save James. We're going to make sure that this does not go on anymore. And we've got to organize, guys. We've got to. I can't stand here in these cases anymore. A 9-year-old kid. If we can't stand for the children, if we can't stand for this, what can we stand for? So please stay tuned with it, guys. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you a little bit later on.